From the year 2001 to 2005, we had 3 official form factors for the Game Boy Advance. There was the original AGB-001, the SP, and the Micro. Since that time, we had a couple unofficial dedicated Game Boy Advance consoles modified from original Nintendo hardware. These include the original Macro and the recently released Unhinged SP. All these use official Nintendo hardware, and each offers a different user experience. But which one is the best? Hey everyone, how's it going? My name is Tito and welcome to another episode of Retro Renew. Now today, I'm going to try and do something a bit different. A little while ago, shortly after doing the Unhinged SP video, which if you haven't seen already, you can check out by clicking on the link in the video description below, I realized I had many different types of Game Boy Advance consoles. So just to recap, I of course have all the officially released versions of the console, the AGB, AGS, and Micro. But I now have 2 other versions, the Macro, which you all know if you watch the channel I absolutely love, and the fairly new Unhinged SP, both of which are modified versions of existing official Nintendo consoles. Now looking at all these together, I thought to myself, which one is the best? And I thought what better way to figure this out than to do so while also making a video about it, which is exactly what I'm doing right now. Anyway, so I'm going to try and attempt in this video to rank all these consoles from best to worst using objective and some subjective metrics. Now, in doing that, I'm sure my rank may differ from yours, which is why I highly encourage you to tell me what you think the ranking should be in the comments below, and maybe give me a reason why you chose that particular ranking. I want to emphasize that there is no wrong answer here. The correct answer is the one that makes you happy. Now the other purpose of this video is to give you some of the pros and cons of each of these variations of the Game Boy Advance. And for those of you who are perhaps in the market for a new Game Boy Advance, maybe you'll find this video useful in helping you choose the right GBA. Okay, so in order to rank these consoles, I'll be judging each one in 5 different categories. The first of which is comfort. This is of course going to be from my particular perspective. I expect this to be somewhat different from person to person. Next is something I'm going to call Pocketability, or in other words, how well does the console fit into one's pocket? Not an incredibly important category, but one that I thought would make sense for the topic of best form factor. Another area of importance is compatibility with accessories. There are some unique Game Boy Advance accessories out there which are not compatible across the entire line of consoles. I know this to be a very important factor amongst GBA enthusiasts. Also included in this category is the availability of a standard 3.5mm headphone jack. While on the topic of compatibility, there is another factor: backwards compatibility. While some consoles have extensive backwards compatibility with legacy consoles, others unfortunately do not. And last but not least, there is the question of price. Some of these options can get quite pricey, and that always plays an important factor. Now for each category, I'll assign each console a rating of 1 through 10, with 1 being the lowest and 10 being the best. This is largely unscientific and based entirely on opinion. I will then tally up the ratings at the end to see which Game Boy Advance is the best and which is the worst. Now one last thing I want to do is set a baseline. Most of these consoles have been modified in one way or another to varying degrees. In that regard, they all have a backlit screen. Because screen quality is a fairly involved and nuanced category in its own right, I decided to leave it out completely. Alright, so now that we set the tone for this ranking, let's start with the first category: comfort. Up first is the original Game Boy Advance. It features a horizontal form factor which is great for larger hands and in my opinion is very comfortable. It's fairly thick, which gives you a lot to hold on to, and I think it just feels great in the hands. The L and R triggers are large and positioned relatively well to provide for a good gaming experience. All in all, it has great ergonomics. I'm going to rate this one a 10 out of 10. Alright, so here we have the SP. This introduced a foldable form factor to reduce its overall footprint when not in use, which is great. However, its vertical orientation presents a slightly more cramped grip. While by no means a huge issue, it is slightly less comfortable than the original AGB. For games requiring frequent use of the triggers, users may find this slightly less comfortable. I'm going to rate the SP at a 7. Next is the last officially released Game Boy Advance variant, the Micro. Despite its small size, it's still rather comfortable to play. While not as comfortable as its two larger cousins, I found that the L&R triggers were slightly more comfortable to use than the SP. Regardless, I'm going to give this one a 6 as I feel the Micro is not the best option for longer play sessions. Now with the Game Boy Macro, we have another horizontal design. With similar dimensions in terms of length and height to the original GBA, the Macro is considerably thinner, just about half as thick. In my opinion, this provides for a fantastic feel, pretty close to the AGB, so I'm going to rate this at a 9. Oh, and by the way, if you're interested in seeing how to build one of these, check out my tutorial which shows you how to build one just like this. I'll leave it linked in the description below. The Unhinged SP is essentially a regular SP, but not foldable. The beautiful boxy pixel aluminum shell gives us a form factor that most closely resembles the iconic DMG. Since it's based on the SP, it shares quite a bit of the ergonomics, although the base is a bit chunkier and gives you more to hold on to. I'm going to rate this at an 8. Now, in order to determine the score for Pocketability, I'll be using the genes test. This, of course, is a very scientific and technical test. Let's again start with the AGB. This is one of the larger consoles in the mix, but its contours help it slide fairly easily into the pocket. It earns a 7 out of 10. While the SP is smaller than the AGB, it is basically the same thickness. However, it is also a bit blockier with slightly sharper corners. I'm going to also rate this a 7 out of 10. The Micro, being the smallest of the bunch, is of course quite possibly the most pocketable of them all. This was an easy 10 for me. The Macro, believe it or not, is the thinnest of the bunch. Yes, even thinner than the Micro. This allows it to slide into your pocket easily. I'm going to give this one a 9 out of 10. Now, the Unhinged has an awkward shape. The thin top and thick bottom is not ideal for putting it into your pocket. It's just as thick as a regular SP when closed, but given its unusual shape, I'm going to rate this a 5 out of 10 for Pocketability. Now, this is where things start to get interesting. Not all of these options are compatible with official Nintendo accessories. The accessories in question are the link cable, wireless adapter, GameCube link cable, and standard 3.5mm headphones. The AGB is the most compatible since it can accommodate all accessories, and it has a standard headphone jack. I'm giving this one a 10 out of 10. While the SP is also compatible with all accessories, it unfortunately lost the headphone jack and instead replaced it with a proprietary port. This required either the use of a specialized headphone or a dongle. I'm going to give this one an 8 out of 10. When Nintendo released the Micro, they decided to change the link port. Because of this, it's not compatible with any of the original accessories. However, Nintendo released a dedicated link cable and wireless adapter for the Micro. However, these are rare and extremely expensive. On a positive note, the Micro did incorporate a standard 3.5mm headphone jack, so I'm going to give this one a 6 out of 10. The Macro is the worst when it comes to compatibility with accessories. It is not compatible with any. The only thing going for it is that it has a 3.5mm headphone jack. This gets a 3 out of 10. The Unhinged SP is of course very similar to the regular SP, except due to the design of the boxy pixel shell, it is not compatible with both the GameCube adapter and the wireless adapter. However, it does have the option for a 3.5mm headphone jack, much like the one I have installed here. I'm going to rate this a 7 out of 10. Now let's go over backwards compatibility, and this is pretty important. Again, the original GBA is fully compatible with all original Game Boy, Game Boy Color, and of course Game Boy Advance games. Also, because games slot in from the top, it is also compatible with unique titles such as Kirby Tilt and Tumble. I'm going to rate this 10 out of 10. While the SP shares the same compatibility as the original Game Boy Advance, because the games are loaded from the bottom, it presents issues to games like Kirby Tilt and Tumble, which requires an upright orientation in order to function. So with a few of these small exceptions, I'm going to rate this a 9 out of 10. Now, the Micro presents a much larger issue. It is only compatible with Game Boy Advance games. It is not backwards compatible at all. Heck, Game Boy and Game Boy Color games can't even be inserted. So I'm going to rate this one a 5 out of 10. The Macro has the same exact compatibility issues as the Micro, so I'm going to also give it a 5 out of 10. The Unhinged has the same compatibility as the SP, so I'm going to rate it at a 9 out of 10 as well. And now, the last category of the day, price. This plays a very important role in determining which variation one may choose. The Game Boy Advance is one of the more affordable options, but it also doesn't come backlit from the factory. Installing an aftermarket backlit LCD increases the cost, but in my opinion is an absolutely necessary mod. I would consider this amongst the more affordable options, giving it a 9 out of 10. The SP is slightly pricier than the original if you go with an AGS-001. The AGS-101 on the other hand commands a premium due to its superior backlit screen. A cost-effective route is to get an AGS-001 and upgrade the LCD to an IPS like I have here. On average, this will be slightly more expensive than an original Game Boy Advance, so I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. The Micro is the most expensive original Nintendo variant of the Game Boy Advance. It was released late in the GBA lifecycle and is therefore quite rare. If you shop around, you can get decent prices, but good condition examples are quite costly. I'm going to rate this a 4 out of 10. The Game Boy Macro is probably the cheapest option. Broken DS lights are quite affordable. All you need is a 330 ohm resistor to perform the Macro mod. It also comes with a fantastic backlit screen, so there's no need to upgrade the LCD. Now, if you want to make it look a bit more refined, you can opt to get a boxy pixel shell, but it's completely optional. With minimal costs associated with the Macro mod and the affordability of the DS Lite, I'm going to rate this a 10 out of 10. The Unhinged SP is by far the most expensive of the bunch. This variation of the Game Boy Advance requires an SP donor, an IPS screen, and a boxy pixel aluminum shell and buttons at a minimum. There are other optional parts that of course add to the total cost. Given its extremely large price tag, I'm going to rate this a 2 out of 10. So here are the final results. The original Game Boy Advance is first with a commanding 46 points. The SP comes in second with 39. The Macro is third with 36, and the Micro and Unhinged tie for last with 31 points each. I can't say I'm surprised with the results. Actually, coming into the video, this is how I thought things would turn out. Now, I have to emphasize, this was just a very limited way to compare these different variations of the Game Boy Advance. In fact, I would love to hear how you all would rank these consoles. What are some of the other factors you would consider that I didn't go over in my assessment? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and perhaps I'll do an update with a larger and more comprehensive list of categories. I'm sure I forgot about some things, but this was a fun experiment nonetheless. I hope you did enjoy this video. If you did, please give it a like and consider subscribing to the channel. You can find me on Facebook and Instagram at Macho Nacho Productions. I release content every Thursday, so be sure to turn on notifications. And as always, see you next time.